Hello everybody, welcome to Vaishayas. This is Pranay and we are going to continue the Tamil Nadu history textbook series and hope you all are doing great. Please like this video, please comment on this video and please share it to your friends. And if you have not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe for regular updates and please reach us on WhatsApp. The WhatsApp number has been provided here. Okay, so please reach us on WhatsApp for regular updates, and all the information is being provided on WhatsApp regarding test series and all the video series and any launches. Okay, we shall continue. So we shall start with the chapter number 3, rise of territorial kingdoms and new religious sects. So previously we have seen the Vedic culture. Before that we have seen the prehistoric culture and the cultures, the transition cultures between the Harappan culture and then to the Vedic culture, and now we are going to see after the Vedic culture, what has happened after the Vedic culture. Okay, so we shall see the migration of Aryans towards Ganges plains and use of iron technology. Second, urbanization and emergence of Mahajanapadas. Socio-economic changes associated with changes in the polity. Intellectual ferment and new consciousness stirred by the Buddhism, Jainism and Ajivikam, and heterodox faiths in the Tamil country. Okay, so Aryans began migrating eastwards from about 1000 BC. As you have seen, they came from the Central Asian part, and then slowly they entered the Indian territory, and slowly they started moving much more eastwards basically. Okay, as they moved eastwards, they encountered thick forests since it was not inhabited previously. So as soon as these people started moving eastwards, they encountered thick forest. Iron played a significant role in the clearing of the forest. See, previously they were very familiar with the copper basically. As the time passed by, they started getting information regarding the iron and how to smelt iron, and they discovered the iron ore, and slowly they used low quality iron. Then slowly they developed that iron technology basically. So iron being very strong metal, and which is used basically in these weapons and tools, and specifically the development of that period is linked with the iron basically. Okay, iron has played very important role in development at that point of time due to the weapons and the quality of tools. Okay, and these also, the hand axe and other different kind of material was helpful in clearing the forest, as well as the plowshare. Slowly they started using the plowshare of iron, so automatically that iron plowshare created ease of access to the agriculture. The agriculture became much easier. Okay, you will see in the later slides. Okay, the fertile soil of Gangetic Valley and use of iron plowshares improved agriculture productivity. Okay, iron also played a big role in improving craft production, such as pottery, carpentry and metalworking. Okay, this in turn paved the way of urbanization. So slowly what has happened is the economy started growing at that point of time, because the agriculture was high. So automatically people's expenditure and wants will be more. Okay, as the agriculture is surplus. Okay, slowly they started trading. Automatically as they traded, there is a need of different items. Okay, maybe jewelry, maybe carpentry, maybe pottery items, whatever it is. Okay, so this was the reason of the urbanization. In the meantime, a spirit of skepticism began to pervade, questioning every custom and orthodoxy. What has happened is, at a point of time, because of the Vedic culture, the Brahmins, started becoming much more rigorous towards the rituals and, that orthodoxy basically. Orthodoxy is basically, following some sort of set of rules. Okay, so the Vedic culture has created some set of rules. Okay, set of rules. Basically, whoever are following that set of rules. Okay, for example, they will create some sort of set of rule that so and so person only has to do the puja in so and so temple. Okay, so what will happen is the people start following it, and that is called some sort of orthodoxy. So in that orthodoxy, because some people were suppressed, okay, so those people started hating that orthodoxy and started heterodoxy. Okay, you will see in the coming slides what heterodoxy was exactly and how it started. Okay, because of those reasons, couple of new religions and couple of new lifestyles started in that period itself, and this created new religions such as Buddhism, Jainism, and so on. Okay, sources. So where did we get the most of the information? Mahabharata and Ramayana, the Dharma Shastras. Okay, these were very important evidences. These books contain a lot of evidences. Maybe they might be somewhat true, somewhat false, and maybe exaggerated, but lot of information has been extracted from these kind of books. Buddhist texts such as Triptikas and Jatakas, Jaina texts and Greek accounts. Okay, so these are very important source of evidence from that time of time. Archaeological excavations, okay, corroborated the literary evidences. Okay, they whatever we found in the books basically was properly matched with the archaeological excavations. Okay, iron objects such as hoes, sickles, knives, hooks, nails, arrowheads, vessels, and mirror confirms the widespread use of iron technology. Textiles, beads, pottery, ivory objects, ceramics, and glassware and artifacts of other metals are also found. A large number of terracotta artifacts were also found. Okay, some of the urban features revealed by excavation. Okay, so they were using northern blackware, black polished ware. Okay, which was considered luxury wear, and urban hallmark has been excavated. So this was considered as an luxury, okay, and was a hallmark of urban lifestyle. Okay, the towns were enclosed by a moat and sometimes they were fortified. Okay, houses were built with mud bricks and in some cases with burnt bricks also. Facilities such as drains, ring wells, and soak pits are found, confirming the second urbanization in the Gangetic Plain. So first was the Harappan. Okay, the Harappan was the first urbanization. Okay, now after the the decline of Harappan, there is some sort of gap there. The Harappan did not continue. In the previous classes in the Vedic culture and all, we read like the assumption of Vedic culture being the Harappan culture was not exactly correct, because the Vedic people were somebody else who came from the outside world, basically the outside of the Indian continent. Okay, so these people slowly, because of the iron technology and couple of other economic activities, slowly they started getting developed, and slowly there was a pathway of urbanization. Okay, so this was the second urbanization. So this is the northern black polished ware. This now doesn't seem very shiny, but even couple of pieces I found which are very extremely shiny. That's why it is called as the polished ware. Okay, these kind of pottery was considered very luxury at that point of time. Normal terracotta pots were used for regular purposes, but this pottery was very resemblant to the urbanization. Wherever there was some sort of urbanization and luxury, there these kind of pots were found. Okay, so we will see the developments in Gangetic Plain. So slowly these people started moving eastwards, right, from the Rajasthan area, and slowly the UP area, and slowly they started moving eastwards basically. So what has happened in the Gangetic Plain? What kind of developments where they started settling there at this point? What were the developments basically? Okay, agriculture improved. Okay, because we saw because of the iron plowshare, and maybe because of they started understanding what kind of time they will get, what kind of season, and when there is rainfall and abundance of water from Ganga, and lot of sediments and minerals being carried by the Ganga, and at that point of time there was no pollution at all. Okay, so automatically the agriculture started getting improved. Okay, during this phase of development in the Gangetic Plain. Wet rice cultivation. Okay, wet rice cultivation. Previously, now, as you know, that rice needs, that water pit kind of a thing for a long time. Okay, so at that point of time there was a transition. Previously, they might be having a lot of trial and error methods and different type of methodologies. Okay, so because they don't know how to cultivate and how to produce and all that. And more or less after this period also, at the end of this period, there was transplantation methodology in rice paddy fields basically. So because of that, tremendous growth was there. Okay, so slowly there was some sort of development in agriculture also. Okay, so wet rice cultivation began to yield more produce of rice than other crops, thus creating the necessary surplus. Okay, protected irrigation alone was not responsible for the surplus production of rice. Iron technology also played a crucial role. Okay, while it is debated whether iron X aided clearing of the forest or whether iron plowshare increased the agriculture yield, there can be no two opinions that it played a critical role in improving the production of artifacts. Okay, the impact of iron technology is better understood if one considers the technical changes which the introduction of iron implements would have brought. Okay, about in various craft activities. Leisure time provided by agriculture surplus, because since you have lot of food at your home, you will start, what you will do basically, you will spend some time into other things basically. So which created the time for the trade and crafts and all. Once the crafts are made, obviously those crafts will be sold. Okay, so they will start selling it, and they will start having a market. There will growth in the market, and automatically the life of the people also will start growing. So that kind of a thing was happening because of the agriculture surplus. So more or less whatever the development is being done there, whatever development is happening there, is due to the agriculture surplus, directly or indirectly. Okay, agriculture surplus, the growth of crafts and trade, and growing population led to emergence of towns in Gangetic Plains. So previously there were some small villages. Previously there were just divided into clans, and those clans used to live in their temporary habitats. Slowly the population started growing, and because of the agriculture surplus, automatically they started to earn, and the lifestyle got changed basically. So because of that, there were emergence of towns, and still the Gangetic Plains are very populated, densely populated. Okay, so this is called the second urbanization in Indian history after the first urbanization evident in Harappan civilization. We read different type of towns came into being. Political and administrative centers. Okay, political and administrative centers where the king used to sit, and most of the governance used to happen from there. Rajagriha, Shravasti, Kaushambi, and Champa. Okay, centers of trades and commerce, Ujjain and Taxila. So Ujjain and Taxila are basically the trade and commerce centers. They are headquarters for the trade and commerce. Okay, now like we have commercial capital like Mumbai. Okay, so at that point of time, the trade and commerce was happening more or less in Ujjain and Taxila. Okay, holy centers such as Vaishali, religious center. Okay, so this is part of the Vaishali. That time you can see different kind of artifacts, and what is this, you just comment in the comment box what is this. Okay, so you need to understand what kind of things were there basically, what is this, and whether this was placed at this point of time when all the religious things were happening, or was it placed later. Okay, you just put it in the comments, and let us know how and where did you read also. Okay, next we will see about the Janapadas and Mahajanapadas. Still now you saw small towns started growing. Okay, so that towns started having population, but slowly these towns also got more and more extended. Okay, couple of towns became one district kind of a thing which we have now, like a mandal, and a lot of mandals will become a district. There was a division in Janapadas and Mahajanapadas. You will see in the coming slides. The later Vedic period witnessed the transition from a tribal polity based on lineage to a territorial state. Okay, the Janas who migrated eastwards began to settle down in various regions. Previously, they were more or less nomadic, and they used to travel for food and all. Now, the agriculture and pastoralism, because of the agriculture and pastoralism and different cultural changes, they started doing pottery and all. They can't do this pottery and all while they travel anywhere. Okay, they can't sell, just by traveling and all. They will start settling down. Okay, the loyalty of the people shifted from Jana, okay, tribe or clan, to Janapada, territory. Okay, so slowly the concept of territory started. Okay, for example, this is a small village. So here there were couple of clans. Like this is a small village, there are 3 clans previously, tribal clans kind of. But now what is happening is the whole thing is being considered as a territory, and there is some sort of centralized person taking care of these all stuff basically. Okay, Janapada literally meant the place where tribe sets its foot upon. Okay, the Janapadas fought with one another for resources and political dominance. Okay, some Janapadas extended their territories and brought various Janas within their jurisdiction. Such Janapadas grew into Mahajanapadas. Okay, so for example, this is Janapada, this is Janapada, this is Janapada. A king is there and he will say these all are my territory, and this will be called as a Mahajanapada. Okay, territory, people, government and sovereignty are important elements of a state. This is a very important line. 2021 question was there. Okay, unexpectedly, unintentionally, you might have read this also previously, but this shows the importance. Like a smallest of the smallest line, okay, can be a question in the UPSC prelims. What they say is unpredictable, but more or less they pick it from there itself. But this line, if you read it just normally, it will just stay in your mind and it will fade away. Okay, but now you see territory, people, government and sovereignty are important elements of a state. It automatically triggers when you are writing the exam. So you need to be very careful and read between the lines also. They say read between the lines. Everything is important. Okay, everything is important, and now it has become a trend to remember each and everything. Least of the least important thing is becoming very important now. Okay, all these elements were found in some of the Mahajanapadas. The Mahajanapadas represent the emergence of territorial kingdoms that ruled over the people, which is called the Jana. The king headed the government. Previously, there was a tribal chief person who used to take care, but he was not very powerful, and more or less all the divisions, decisions were being taken care by all the people from the Sangha, and he was just the protector of all the people. He was not a very decision making person. But now there is a king. Okay. In the Vedic period itself, the king became very important because of the rituals and the distinction between people. Now king headed the government completely. Now it's like the actual transition being happened now. Okay, aided by the centralized administration. Okay, the king was also the sovereign ruler. He was the top candidate. Okay, the king levied taxes out of agriculture surplus and redistributed it and ensured maintenance of law and order in hierarchical society by force and coercion. Okay, so basically it is becoming a government kind of a thing. There is a ruler. Okay, there is a ruler, and under him there are 3 governors. Okay, he is taking care of XYZ. I will 1 second, I will tell. See, there is a ruler basically. Okay, consider him as, okay, Okay, he is a ruler. So he is having, couple of governors. For example, consider this as a state of ABC. So he will take care of A, he will take care of B, he will take care of C. In that also, there will be couple of people who will be taking care of law and order. Okay, and some will be taking care of revenue in the same way. Okay, so he is becoming the sovereign authority over everything. Okay, you got it. So he is the important person. Then there is some sort of hierarchy being taken care. Okay, under these people also there will be couple of officers being working basically. Okay. According to Puranic, Buddhist and Jaina traditions, there were 16 Mahajanapadas. Okay, Gandhara, Kamboja, Asaka, Vatsa, Avanti, Shurasena, Chedi, Malla, Kuru, Panchala, Matsya, Vajji, which is also called as Rijji, Anga, Kasi, Kosala and Magadha. You need to have an idea. If UPC asks, a couple of, gives a list and they say identify the Mahajanapadas or which one is not a Janapada. So you need to have an idea. At least, you need to at least recognize which were the Mahajanapadas and which were not, basically. The Mahajanapadas are classified as Ganasanghas and chiefdoms based on the nature of their polity. You will see in the coming slides. So see, Mahajanapada. See, what in this area specifically, there was the Harappan culture. Slowly, the Vedic culture, when they entered, slowly it was spread in this area. Now you see, it is increasing in eastwards basically, and more or less here also. There is lot of development happening. Okay, and you can see different colors are there. No, so these are giving the information of the different kind of Mahajanapadas, and these Ujjaini, Mahitsma, Vidisha, these were important cities. Okay. What is Ganasangha basically? The proto states of Gangatic region were known as Janapadas. Okay, and comprised of chiefdoms, republics, and small kingdoms. 16 Mahajanapadas find mention in the early texts. Okay, there were also Ganasanghas or oligarchies which were centered on the clans. Okay, the Vijjis were one of the best known of the Ganasanghas, and Vaishali was their capital in the Mithila region. Okay, these kingdoms did not come under the single decision making authority of a king. Okay, but decisions were taken on a collective basis by the heads of different clans together. Okay, there were also smaller kingdoms such as Kosala and Kasi. So this was actually, representing some sort of a kind of a democracy kind of a thing. The decision was not taken by a single king. So, heads of different clans used to sit together and they used to take a decision collectively. It is interesting to note that the names of the clans such as Ikshvaku and Vrishni, as well as these early kingdoms, are all mentioned in the two epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata. Okay. The Mahajanapadas on the Gangatic plains were all monarchies. Okay, Mahajanapadas, all are monarchies. There was a single monarch. Okay, Vedic orthodoxy was an established practice in these kingdoms. At this point of time, the Vedic culture became very evident that these kingdoms were more or less following the Vedic practices itself, more or less. Okay, the priestly class enjoyed a preeminent status in the Mahajanapadas. Obviously, when there is a Vedic culture being encouraged or followed, automatically the priest will be the highest person who will be taking care, okay, of all the rituals and all. So automatically, priest will become a very important figure. Okay, the kingdoms were governed by kings and the administration was centralized. Okay, the Brahman priest provided legitimacy to the king through various rituals. So for example, the king, when he has to become a king, he has to take off a couple of various rituals. He needs to follow some sort of rituals. Okay, after that only he will be declared as a king. That was the situation at that point of time. Even he was eligible to become a king, there were a couple of rituals before becoming a king. Okay, so priest was having very important role in making the king also, basically. Okay, the kingship was hereditary and the succession was in most cases based on the law of primogeniture. So basically what it means is the first son, okay, the eldest son is considered as the uh, what do we call, the next generation head, basically. Okay, the successor of the king. The king was assisted by councils called the parishad and sabha. The councils were advisory in nature. Okay, these all represent a kind of polity at that point of time. Okay, revenue and taxes. The king appropriated the agriculture surplus through land revenue. Okay, apart from few other taxes. Bali was a tax imposed based on the area of cultivable land. So automatically now, previously it was like, if you are getting some 20 bags, you pay some 1/5 or 1/4 of the bags. Now the area of cultivable land is being considered here. The revenue changed a bit. Now also bhaga was the share of the produce. So they are charging two now. Okay, the cultivable land as well as the cultivated product also. Okay, kara and shulka were some of the other taxes collected during this period. Okay, thus the king raised revenue through taxes to maintain an elaborative administrative structure and an army. So automatically, once you are developing, what happens is invasions happen. Okay, because of these invasions and all, they need to maintain a proper army. They need to fortify the city. They need to keep the army very active. Okay, for that they need a lot of money, so automatically they will start increasing the taxes. Okay, for example, if some war is happening, automatically for the pumping the money, automatically all the prices they will increase. The increase in the petrol prices, maybe the daily commodities also will increase because of the because they need to pump money for the military purposes, basically. Okay, you need to remember these kind of words, basically, the kara, shulka, okay, bhaga, bali. Okay, the terminologies is becoming very important in UPSC prelims specifically. Okay, the richer landowners were called as grihapatis. Okay, these landowners employed laborers called dasas or karmakaras. Okay, the smaller landowners were known as kasakas or krishakas. Okay, the society was stratified on the basis of varna. Same, the varna is still continuing. Okay, it emerged as a marker of the status. So automatically the higher varna people will be in the status also, you will be higher. Okay, similar way, cultivators and artisans were identified as shudras. Okay, cultivators and artisans. Okay, a new social category that emerged during this period was placed below the shudras in the social hierarchy and considered untouchables. So untouchability started at this point of time. Okay, shudras, the brahmans. Next is the kshatriyas. Okay, next is the Vaishyas, and next is the Shudras. Below them also there is somebody called as untouchables. Okay, that how the situation became now. Okay, they were forced to live on the fringes of the settlements and subsisted on the hunting and gathering their food. So what they are doing is they had to live outside the village, outskirts of the village, and hunting and gathering their food. Okay, they were marginalized and given only menial jobs, such as urbanization was on the rise. So they were given laborer jobs kind of a thing. Okay, they had their own language also, which was different from the regular language spoken by the Indo-Aryans. Okay, because of these all situations, because of the suppressions, because of different kind of rituals being happened, because of the distinctions, slowly couple of people started coming up with different thoughts, like the Vedas are not correct, the Vedic culture is not correct. Okay, there is no sort of what do we call distinctions, basically. With those kind of philosophies, with those kind of methodologies, thought process, they started coming a different kind of heterodox things. Orthodox is opposite to heterodox, basically. Orthodox is basically the process being followed as they are following. Like, for example, the god is there, the god is so and so, and such rituals have to happen. You need to do the puja at so and so time. Those are all basically orthodox things, basically the faith which everybody is following. Okay, heterodox is basically hatke, basically they don't follow the orthodoxy, basically. Okay, in the 6th and 5th centuries before the Common Era, 6th century to 5th century BC, North India underwent a remarkable intellectual awakening that profoundly impacted India and influenced its culture in subsequent millennia as well. Okay, the impact also swept across South Asia. This awakening was the outcome of questioning the existent philosophy. Okay, so basically, what is happening is, whatever the Vedic ritual is happening, the sacrifices happening, okay, the sacrifices, the distinctions, these discriminations, these all were trying to do a lot of suppression, basically. Okay, because of that suppression, there was some sort of awakening in couple of people, which created different type of religions, which gave birth to different kind of religions. Okay, Ghosala, Gautama Buddha, Mahavira, Ajita Kesavam, okay, and other thinkers renounced the world and wandered across the Gangetic plains, contemplating and reflecting on the social and cultural scenario of their times. It was not uncommon to see ascetics crisscrossing the Gangetic plains and propounding new ideas. Okay, what they are telling is, at that point of time, a lot of ascetics started traveling in different places, understanding the situations, spreading, what they know, what they feel, basically. Okay, the teachings of these ascetics address the needs of the rapidly changing society, which saw the emergence of new polity. Okay, emergence of new polity, the coming into being of urban centers, development of crafts, and an increase in long distance trade. These thinkers questioned the Vedic ideas of soul, mind, and body, thereby paving the way of rise of new religions. Even though all of them questioned the Vedic religion, there was a rivalry among them also. Okay, eventually Buddhism and Jainism emerged as popular faiths. Okay, so what were the causes of intellectual awakening? So, 6th century BC was a period of intense intellectual ferment. Okay, there are several reasons for emergence of this ferment: state formation and the rigidity of Vedic religion. Okay, so automatically, because of the state formation, they have to follow some sort of rules of that specific state. Okay, automatically the religious practices and all that were happening because of the king or the monarch. They will give so and so information, and that has to be followed, basically. Because of that, the thought process or the liberty of thought and all were completely restricted. Okay, state formation and rigidity of Vedic religion constrained the liberty of thought and action. A revolt action against the religious practice of following dogmas found its articulation in heterodox sect. The emergence of territorial identities accelerated the process of socio-political and economic changes. Automatically, the territorial boundary started happening. So inside the boundary, whatever it is happening is based on the monarch, basically the king. Okay, because of that, there is some sort of economic changes and social changes. Because of that, the elite class, okay, disillusioned with the system in place, began to move in protest towards the heterodox religions blossoming in Magadha and Middle Ganges plains. Okay, as the Vedic religion was not fully organized, its reach did not permeate into the society. Okay, and hence people did not find it difficult to follow the newly emerging religious sects. Okay, with urbanization and expansion of trade, new classes of merchants and bankers, such as Sethis, sought higher social status appropriate to their economic status. Okay. Also, the grievance of Kshatriyas was that they were denied a staged life, the ashramas, which we saw in the previous class, the brahmacharya, okay, that thing, okay, ashramas. Here it is a privileged permit only to Brahmins in the Vedic text. So Kshatriyas were also not happy with it. Okay. So what were heterodox sects? The ascetic vendors and teachers attracted group of followers and established various sects. Their philosophies encompassed antinomian belief that divine grace takes away the necessity of obeying moral law. Okay, materialistic and fatalist elements. Okay, they were heterodox sects that rivaled the orthodox Vedic religion, and many of them came into existence during this time. Okay, so Buddhist text Samanaphala Sutta, while making a reference to Ajata Shatru of Magadha meeting Gautama Buddha, mentions that before his meeting, the former had a philosophical discourse with the leaders of various sects such as Purana Kassapa, Makkali Gosala, Ajita Kesambulan, Pakuda Kachayana, Sanjaya Belatiputra, Niganta Nataputra, who was actually the Mahavira. Okay, so these people had conflict kind of a thing in the thought process. Okay, they are described as homeless wanderers of long-standing Chirapabbijito, founders of the sects Tittakaro, and leaders of their orders Ganacharyo. Okay, these sects were the key rivals of Buddhism. Their doctrine was shown unsatisfactory while that of Buddha was acceptable to Ajatashatru. What they want to say is basically at that point of time there were couple of discourse, conflict or difference in opinions in these all people. So in that the Ajatashatru, when meets the Gautam Buddha, mentions that before he met Gautam Buddha, he met various people, different sects, but he was not very happy except the Gautama Buddha. Okay, so this thing was written in a Buddhist text, so automatically obviously the Buddhist importance will be exaggerated, and more or less in every book of the of some XYZ religion they will praise the XYZ religion, and they will slowly avoid, and they will prove that the all other religions are pretty lower than the XYZ religion. It happens in all the things. We will see about the Ajivika sect. Okay, the sect which was one of the heterodox sects, the starting heterodox sects. Okay, the Ajivikas are believed to evolve from one of the many ascetic groups of that times. According to the Buddhist record, Nanda Vacha was considered the founder. Okay, Nanda Vacha. The successor was Kisa Sammika, followed by Makkali Goshala, who was the third and the greatest of the Ajivikas. Simple question will be there. Makkali Goshala was related to which of the sects? Okay, similar. Okay, this kind of things you just note it down. Okay, or revise or see the video again. To have a good memory. Goshala met Mahavira for the first time in Nalanda, and their friendship lasted for 6 years. Okay, they separated due to doctrinal differences. So Goshala and Mahavira were together for 6 years, but because of the differences in their thought process, okay, they got divided. Goshala then went to Shravasti, where he was patronized by a rich potter woman called Hala Hala. Okay, he believed in the doctrine of reanimation and criticized and ridiculed the severe austerities of Vedic ascetics. Whatever austerities, like they will give some sort of rule basically. Okay, so he was opposite to those kind of severe rules. Basically, they need to follow. What do we call? Ahimsa. They should not eat so and so items. They should celibacy. They should have to follow celibacy. These and they need to do some sort of sacrifices and all. So those kind of things he started hating, and he was opposite to them. Being rival sects, both the Buddhist and Jaina accounts portray Gosala as a person of vicious character. That's what I said. Okay, the Buddhist will say so and so were not good. Jaina will say so and so were not good. Okay, similar way. Okay, Shravasti was the headquarters of the Ajivika sect. Okay, Shravasti was the headquarters. Okay, the Ajivikas were naked ascetics. The basic principle of Ajivikas was niyati or fate. Okay, niyati or fate. They believed that nothing in this world could be changed. What they believed is your fate has already been written. Whatever you do good karma, you do bad karma, you whatever you want to do, you do, but nothing is going to change in the future. It was the basic principle of Ajivikas. Everyone has to pass through a series of transmigration to put an end to the pain. According to Ajivikas, there were 6 inevitable factors in the life: gain and loss, joy and sorrow, and life and death. 2 other preachers, Purana Kassappa and Pakuda Kachayana, joined the Ajivikas after the death of Gosala and infused new life to it. See, this is Gandhara sculpture, okay, of Mahapari Nirvana. Okay, so these all are linked to the Ajivikas. Basically, you can see here. Okay, Mahakasyapa, which you just read, okay, meets an Ajivika and learns the Parinirvana. Okay, what was Parinirvana exactly? Purana Kassapa held the view that actions did not have any merit or demerit. No evil is caused by torture, hurting, and killing others. So, no evil is caused by torture and killing others. You can kill anybody. Okay. Similarly, no merit is acquired by generosity, self-control, and truthful speech. Even if you live with generosity, even if you do very good karma also, there is no meaning. Okay, you do whatever you want to do. You do bad things, you do good things, nothing is going to happen. They were following that kind of a thing. Humans cannot change anything by action, as everything is predetermined. Okay, according to him, non-action is the way out of life. You do nothing, you will be out of life. That's the philosophy he had. Pakuda Kachayana believed that world was made of 7 substances, okay, that were unmade, irreducible, uncreated, barren, stable as a mountain peak, standing firm like a pillar, that do not alter, do not change, do not interfere with one another, are incapable of causing one another pleasure, pain, or both pleasure and pain. Okay. The Ajivikas had rich lay disciples such as potters and bankers. So they had disciples who were potters and bankers, were rich as well as laymen. The Ajivika sect spread across length and breadth of the country. Through their influence was much less compared to that of Buddhism and Jainism. Even they were not very competitive with Buddhism and Jainism, but still, it was spreading pretty good. Ajita Kesambalin, Ajita of hair blanket, was the materialist. He believed that every human was made of 4 primary elements: fire, water, wind, and sense. After death, these elements return to the earth. There is no life after the death. Okay, he said, generosity is taught by idiots. Okay, the word of those who speak of existence after death are false, empty chatter. Okay, while the breakup of the body, the wise and the foolish alike are annihilated, destroyed. They do not exist after the death. Okay, the Cholas are known to have levied a tax on the Ajivikas. A pretty important point. Okay. Lokayata and Karvaka. So, who are Lokayata? The term Lokayata signifies materialistic thought. You saw here, right? This guy, okay, Ajita Kesambalin. So, he was a materialist. So, it was given a name, Lokayata. Indian materialism has also named Karvaka after one of the two founders of the school, okay, who are the Karvaka and Ajita Kesambalin, okay, are said to have established Indian materialism as a formal philosophical system. Karvakas developed the concept of skepticism. Okay, you question everything, you doubt everything. Okay, and believed in the pursuit of knowledge through experience. Knowledge through experience. They questioned the authority of Vedas. Okay, so they were all against the Vedic culture, but still they had their own fight among themselves also. Okay, there was intense rivalry among the various heterodox sects. This is evident from the various religious accounts of the period. Buddhist and Jaina texts not only mention other heterodox sects but also belittle them. Okay, so what they are doing is they will mention about the other sects being formed at that point of time, but also they will belittle them. Okay, they will show like they were not correct, they were very small thought process people basically. Bhagavati Sutra, a Jaina text, provides a poor account of Makhali Goshala. Okay, poor account of Makhali Goshala. He is described as a born to a poor mendicant in a cowshed. He was he was born to a poor beggar basically, okay, in a cowshed. It accused him of becoming a disciple of Mahavira for material comfort, okay, as the latter had many wealthy patrons. Okay, so basically the Makkala Goshala was linked to Mahavira for wealth only, because Mahavira was so great, he had lot of rich patrons also. Okay, so it was interpreted or written in that way. Okay, it describes the greatest Ajivika teacher as a person of most contemplate character. Okay, a man of low parentage and low profession. Okay, the Ajivika teacher, the greatest Ajivika teacher, is given a low character, low parentage and low profession. Okay, Buddha Gosha also ridicules Gosala in the commentaries. He described Gosala as a servant fleeing naked from his master on committing a mistake. Okay, he did a mistake and he fled naked from there, even disregarding the fact that his garment had fallen. Okay, so that's all for today, and you will see the Buddhism, Jainism, and how they declined, how they spread, and various different kind of things in the next class. Okay, and so if you like the video, please like the video and please comment, this will give us a lot of encouragement. Okay, please comment. Okay, so we are seeing a drop in the likes and comments, so if it continues like that, so we might not be able to provide you free courses at all. Please share it to your friends and subscribe to the channel. Okay, and if you want any sort of information, please reach us on WhatsApp. The number has been provided, and you can even mail us also. Okay, and thank you and have a great day.